Okay, so the actual most tragic Persona character is probably like Tatsuya or someone. But since the remake of Persona 3 came out, I've been thinking about its cast a lot. Specifically, who I believe to be the most tragic character of that game. Shinjiro Aragaki. He's a fan favorite, even if our time with him is cut incredibly short. Despite that, it's clear why he's so well loved. The cold, distant man with the heart of gold is a tried and true character archetype. But if it was all Shinji had going for him, I likely wouldn't be making this video. Like all good characters, Shinji has layers. He's cold and distant for a reason, and best of all, the game uses its mechanics as a way of telling us a lot about him, instead of leaving all of that heavy lifting to the story. To set the groundwork for this analysis, I'll need to recap Shinji's backstory. Shinjiro Aragaki, alongside party members Akihiko Sanada and Mitsuru Kirijo, comprised the original SEES team that now consists of Yu and several other characters. The original SEES team were only middle schoolers at the time and hadn't yet awoken to their personas, and so exploration of the ominous mega dungeon Tartarus was mostly fruitless. Even still, these memories seem to be looked back on fondly by the three. Shinji's disillusionment and falling out with SEES happened 2 years prior to the events of the game, where shortly after awakening to his persona, he lost control of it, leading to it killing an innocent bystander during a battle with a shadow. This bystander just happened to be the mother of one Ken Amada, a young child who also witnessed this event and vowed revenge on the man who killed his mom, accidentally or not. This event understandably shook Shinji to his very core. Not just to the point that he quit SEES, he basically quit everything. Living as a vagabond on Tatsumi Port Island on a permanent leave of absence from school. And most importantly, taking a drug that suppresses the power of a persona. This behavior makes it clear that Shinji is suicidal. Made crystal clear by the end of his arc, but even still, it's simple to piece together once you find out that the suppressant he takes dramatically shortens the lifespan of its user. All of these choices he's made are done out of guilt. Shinji feels that because he's killed someone with his persona, that he doesn't deserve happiness or to even live. He's basically waiting out the days until he succumbs to the suppressants. This would be sad enough as is, but events throughout the game show glimpses of the younger, more compassionate Shinji. The first time we ever see Shinji is when he's checking up on Akihiko in his hospital room. He gives the player the cold shoulder at this moment, but actions speak louder than words. He was making sure his old friend was okay after the full moon. Besides, the next time the player and Shinji cross paths, he shows them his compassion by protecting the second years from some thugs. This not only shows his compassion, but also his lack of self-preservation. Throughout the game, we're shown scenes of Akihiko attempting, to no avail, to convince Shinji to rejoin SEES, assuring him that things are different now with the introduction of our player character and the other second-year students. Shinji rebukes these requests at every turn, getting more and more aggressive with every attempt. It isn't until Akihiko confronts him in September does Shinji finally balk and rejoin the team. Why is that though? Akihiko is considerably more forceful at this go-around, but that isn't what convinces Shinji. Instead, it's the revelation that the aforementioned Ken Amada has joined SEES which causes Shinji to rejoin the team.
That's not everything. Amada has joined our team.
What the hell do you mean?
He has the potential, and Ikutsuki-san approved it. He's a persona user now.
I don't believe it. Tell me one more thing. Was it his decision to join?
Yeah. He came to us.
I see. Then, I guess I'll stick around.
What I find fascinating about this change of heart is that once Shinji hears Ken has joined SEES, he doesn't need any time to think about his decision. It's an immediate flip. I've seen a couple different theories as to why this information causes Shinji to rejoin SEES, one of which comes from a pretty dark place. Some theorize that Shinji knew Ken would want to exact revenge on him for what he did to his mother, so he purposefully got closer to the kid to build up his hatred, so he would do the deed and put Shinji out of his own misery. I won't deny that's plausible. Persona 3 has some pretty dark themes, suicide being far from exempt. We've also established that Shinji is suicidal, but personally, I have a different theory for why Shinji rejoined SEES when he did. I believe he rejoined SEES to protect Ken and attempt to atone for his past deeds. Thanks to the suppressants, he knows he doesn't have much time left anyway. And we also know that Shinji is a pretty caring guy, even if he doesn't like to show it. Ken may be a Persona user, but he's just a kid, and way over his head. Shinji, and Akihiko for that matter, aren't stupid. They at the very least know that the events of 2 years ago are what led Ken to joining SEES. Maybe they don't know that he wants to kill Shinji, but they know that at least. So Shinji likely feels he's responsible for Ken's decision. His persona's arcana is also the Hierophant, which are usually filled in by the role of a mentor character, which definitely fits Shinji's role in the story. Speaking of his persona, let's take a closer look at it, and the way it blends storytelling and gameplay together. Shinji's persona is Castor, one of the many personas in 3 that takes its identity from Greek mythology. In case you're not well read on that stuff, or don't read the persona descriptions, Castor is the half-brother of Polydeuces, Akihiko's persona. They share a mother and Leda, a mortal woman. Castor's father was mortal as well, but Polydeuces' father was Zeus, meaning his son had demigod properties Castor lacked. This detail will be important later. Even if you don't know about this history, you can see the relation through the design similarities between the two personas. This isn't meant to imply that Shinji and Akihiko are blood related, however. The half-brother relationship of Castor and Polydeuces, of being family but not quite full-fledged brothers, is being used as a parallel to Akihiko and Shinji's found familial bond they shared at the orphanage. Castor's design also has him on horseback. Interestingly enough, Castor's horse is slightly similar to the rocking horses that certain shadow enemies have. Likely this is meant to suggest that the shadows you face and the personas the party members have are not too dissimilar. Perhaps Castor has it as a tie-in to remind the player of that connection, as Castor went berserk a few years ago in a very similar fashion to a shadow attack. The most striking aspect of Castor's design, though, is the lance impaled through his chest. What this symbolizes feels pretty obvious to me. Between the suppressant drug and his persona user's own self-destructive nature, both Castor and Shinji do not have long for this world. This parallels the myth of Castor and Polydeuces, the latter of which was destined to outlive the former, thanks to his godly lineage. In battle, Shinji specializes in physical skills, with virtually zero deviation from that path. Other physically oriented persona users like Junpei, Aigis, or even Akihiko have other niches alongside their physical prowess. Shinji can get the powerful buff skill Heat Riser should you train him enough, but most players likely aren't going to see that. I don't think Shinji's specialty in physical skills and only physical skills was a balancing measure, although he does make for a pretty good party member when you have him. His physical skills are instead used to further hammer home his personality to players. Persona games, and Shin Megami Tensei games as a whole, are pretty unique RPGs when it comes to skill costs. In most other RPGs, all types of special attacks a character can use will cost a secondary resource divorced from the user's HP. I can't believe I'm explaining what MP is, but here we are. Persona has this too, for everything except physical skills. Physical skills instead cost a piece of the user's HP to cast. I've always found this mechanic really interesting. Not only does it make physical attackers stand out from magic-type characters, but it can also be used to tell stories, like with Shinji here. We know from the events of the story that Shinji is reckless and self-loathing. Both of these ideas are portrayed through gameplay whenever he spends a fraction of his HP, the mechanical representation of his life, to cast Deathbound or whatever. He even has a unique buffing move, Bloody Charge, which unlike other buffing abilities, costs HP to cast. It's a hefty amount, but it boosts his attack and critical hit rate, so it's more than worth it to use. One mechanic added to the remake is an ability called the Theurgy. It's similar to a super move seen in many RPGs, but what I like about them in Persona 3 Reload is each character has a different way of best filling the gauge that ties into their personality. Shinji's Theurgy gets a significant boost if he's under half health, which encourages the player to act like Shinji, by disregarding their own safety to protect their friends. Eventually, this behavior would be what leads him to his untimely death at the hands of Takaya, but through his death, the bond between Cs would grow significantly. Two more so in particular, Akihiko, who awakens to his ultimate persona, Caesar, allowing Polydeuces to follow Castor to the sky and become the constellation Gemini, and Ken, shedding his persona of Nemesis after realizing his quest for revenge against Shinji was fruitless. When I first played Persona 3, I found Shinjiro Aragaki to be a decent character, one that serves his purpose as a martyr for the sake of having those around him grow. In my recent playthrough of Persona 3 Reload, however, my original perception of him felt quite shallow. He wasn't just a plot device who existed to give other characters a more complete arc. He was a cautionary tale, living proof that you can't run from your problems, or you'll live the rest of your life regretting it, which is a lesson that plays directly into the theme of the game. As punishment for his mistakes, Shinji isolated himself from his friends, suppressed his persona abilities out of fear that they may hurt someone again. He didn't live every day like it was his last. He waited every day hoping it would be his last. That's why I find Shinjiro Aragaki to be Persona's most tragic character. Don't talk to me about Persona 3 Portable.